new video today. Today, the video is going to be titled Wormwood. In my previous video, I discussed the tribulation and went through all 21 judgments of the tribulation found in Revelation. And you can find that video here, the Apocalypse and Armageddon. In that video, I stated I probably would have a future video discussing in more detail some of the judgments found within the tribulation, and these judgments may correlate to one source, which will cause several of these events. I'm going to share two sources in this video that you must take with a grain of salt. These sources are not worthy of creating doctrine from, but can be used to point towards understanding of what is to come. But I promise I will use scriptures afterwards. But the first one I will be using is dreams. But before I get to that, let's set a foundation of scriptures concerning this subject. Again, we are talking about wormwood. If you don't know what that is, I will read the scripture on it in a bit. Acts chapter 2, verse 17. And it shall be in the last days, says God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. So it is scriptural for us to have dreams from God concerning the end times and other events in our lives. There are other scriptures concerning dreams from God. I will not share those today. That is not the focus of this video. I just wanted to read one to show you that it is in the Bible and it is scriptural. All right, now the Bible tells us God will use these dreams. Now this video is not going to be based on the dreams, but I do have dreams to support the end conclusion that I will be bringing in this video. In 2017, I woke up to the signs of the times that Jesus' return was imminent. When I say return, I should clarify and state I believe the rapture is imminent, as the rapture is the first part of his return. But Jesus will not be coming all the way to the earth at the rapture, but only to the clouds and calling us up to him, those of us who are ready. I discuss the rapture in more detail here. The rapture, what, when, and who. Again, in 2017, I woke up to this truth. Now, I already had believed in a coming pre-tribulation rapture, but did not think it imminent, perhaps in 20 to 40 years. Three things woke me up. One was the Great American Eclipse, as I believed it significant, but I also felt a tangible dread during the eclipse, and I discussed this a bit in a video titled Normalcy is Ending, and you can find the video here. The second thing that woke me up was the September 23rd Revelation 12 sign in 2017. That was on September 23rd, 2017. There was a sign which people called the Revelation 12 sign. And I discussed that in the video here, Are We in the End Times Revisited? But the third thing that woke me up to the signs of the times, and which caused me to take the first two signs more seriously, was a dream. On September 7th, 2017, I had a dream. This dream occurred after the eclipse, which occurred on August 20th, but obviously before the September 23rd sign, since it was September 7th. By the way, I was very skeptical of the September 23rd sign and voiced those thoughts in a blog entry seen here. I also have a link to it below. Just to give you an information about what my original thoughts were concerning the September 23rd sign, I was skeptical of it. So as you can see, I knew about the sign, and I discussed it all the way back in June of 2017. I was not for nor against it, but was skeptical. The eclipse event moved me a bit more towards it being legitimate, but it was the dream that sealed the deal for me after a time of prayer. I blogged about the dream on this webpage here. Again, you also find the link in the description below. In the dream, I stepped out of a mall and saw the sky fairly filled with a planet. It was huge. I would guess, if my memory is correct, it filled about 45 degrees of the horizon maybe more, but not much less. I am not one for math, so hopefully my measurement of 45 degrees means something. So if 90 degrees is a sharp angle we see in squares and such, I will put my arms out at such an angle. How much of that area was filled with the planet looking at the horizon? I would guess about half, so 45 degrees. It was so close you could see features on the planet with the naked eye. I remember seeing green spots on it. It was absolutely remarkable, and could note how scary an unbeliever would feel about seeing such a sight so close to the earth. Now, I didn't post this on my blog, but a close friend was with me in the dream when I saw this. The experience was very realistic and terrifying. As I shared, this dream was remarkable and spent a week praying about it. I did not believe in Nibiru and decided God was telling me to accept the September 23rd sign as from Him. I have changed my position back and forth concerning Planet X, and I will share more on this later. I still refuse to use the name Nibiru because of its cultic origins. There are two people who originated Nibiru. One was a woman named Nancy Leader, a Wisconsinite woman who claims that as a girl she was contacted by aliens who put a device in her brain. She claimed that the Comet Halley Bop story, whatever that is, I didn't fully look that up, was made up to distract people from the arrival of Planet X, which would soon pass by Earth and destroy civilization. Although Leader originally referred to the object as Planet X, it became equally known as Nibiru, a planet from the ideas of ancient astronomer theorist Zecharia Sitchin. Sitchin's interpretation of Babylonian religious texts, which contradicts conclusions reached by credited scholars on the subject, a giant planet called Nibiru or Marduk passes by the Earth every 3,600 years. Leader first made the connection between Nibiru and her Planet X on her website in 1996. Sitchin, who died in 2010, denied any connection between his work and Leader's claims. Nancy Leader, by the way, is a self-described psychic. This is why I will not use the word Nibiru. It has cultic origins. But eventually, I did have a second dream, and I blogged on this dream as well, and you can find the webpage here. Again, you can also find it in a link below in the description. This dream occurred on February 10th, 2018. In my dream, I believe I saw two planetary objects orbiting the sun, I think, but were very close to the Earth. I saw one such planet, I thought it was Mars, and it was very red. In my last dream, the planet had blotches of green on it. This time, it had a large mountain or bulge on it, out of proportion to its size. Here's a picture to show that. This planet swung by the Earth really fast and really close, and I realized on its next swing, it would be too close and hit the Earth. It now was in orbit around the Earth, but it didn't seem to go all the way around the planet, but did it more like a giant loop over the top of my location, but yet out of sight. When it came back around, it was very close, but it did not have the size as the one I saw in my previous dream, and I knew it was about to hit the Earth. I was with my wife and I think one of my sons. We were out somewhere, and my wife was about to get into her car, and I said, "I told you this was going to happen," or "I told you about this," something to this effect. I then pointed in the opposite direction of where it crashed, and I said, "Run." It was very intense, and I woke up from the strong emotion of it. Here is a representation of what I think the size of this planet was to Earth. After this dream, I seriously began to consider the first dream should be taken more literally, that some planetary body or bodies was headed towards Earth. I had a third dream of much more recent time period, and that was on April 23rd, 2020. I also blogged about this dream, and you can find it on this webpage here, or again, I'll link to it in the description below. Each time in my dream, the planet gets smaller, but each time the experience is intense. In my dream I just had, I said in the dream, "This is so real. I must be dreaming." And I instantly woke up. But what I meant to say and what was going through my mind was, "This is so strange, intense, and so real, I must be dreaming." In this dream, this time I was with coworkers. I don't know why. We were outside and it was night. At least I think it was. And the moon was huge. In the dream, I believed it was the moon, but it did not look like the moon at all. But yet I believed it was for a time. I believe it was 2 to 3 times the size of the moon. And I said to the coworker, "The moon is as big as some of those movies or fake pictures of it to make it seem beautiful or grand." As I said this, I realized it was odd to be so big and unrealistic, but also had strange characteristics. It had glowing lights on it in 6 to 8 places at least, if not more. These lights were of at least 2 varying sizes, and that there was an oddly shaped area on the moon. Interestingly enough, I had seen this shape before. It was a shape of a board in a game called Atlantis Rising. I never played the board game, but nor have I seen it in person. It has had recently a second edition in the last year or so. I am a board game collector, so I know a lot about board games. Here's a picture of that board. Again, I saw a shape on that moon-like, planet-like thing shaped like this board. Anyways, back to the dream. When I realized the moon was bigger than it was supposed to be and very surrealistic, I was about to say something about it to my coworker, but suddenly a blue hazy object shot across the sky and across the moon. It was vaguely shaped and colored like this. But now that I think about it, it may not have been night, or perhaps it had changed because the sky was now blue, thus making it hard to see this object, this blue object. The object disappeared, and then I saw the other planet. As the planet I saw in the second dream was smaller than the first, this one was also smaller than the second, but was still larger than the moon, the first object in this dream. Maybe it was twice its size. Remember, the moon, that first object I saw, was 2 to 3 times bigger than the actual real moon, so this planet was still quite big. I did see colors, but don't remember, and I saw details, but before taking notice, I went again to speak to my coworker, stating I had shared before, "This is so real, I must be dreaming." But then again thinking, "This is so strange, intense, and so real, I must be dreaming." And then I woke up. It was so intense and so surreal, but yet it felt real, like it was really happening. I think this is to indicate that there is a real planet or planetoid or asteroid on its way to the Earth. I believe God has been trying to get my attention, and the more attention I give to him and to the signs, the smaller the planetary objects become, probably becoming more real to the size we will be dealing with. When I say we, I mean those on the earth at the time, as I hope to be out of here before this happens. All right, so now let's turn to the scripture and see what the Bible has to say about such an event. Luke chapter 21, verse 25 and 26. "And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth will be anxiety of nations with perplexity, and the sea and the waves roaring. Men will faint from fear and anxiety over what is coming upon the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken." So this is a quote from Jesus in the book of Luke, where he says these things in these signs in the heavens and the sky are going to be so big, so grand, it is going to scare people big time. So now, what I'm going to share now is, again, I'm going to read some scriptures concerning some of the judgments in Revelation of the tribulation and how I believe they will correlate with this event. All right, I believe the first judgment event comes from a planetoid or large asteroid as seen in seal number 6. Seal number 6, Revelation chapter 6, verses 12 through 17. "And when he had opened the 6th seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became as black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of the heaven fell to the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken by a mighty wind. And the heaven departed like a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come. Who will be able to stand? These verses may point towards a near miss of a planetoid causing an earthquake, its debris or itself covering the sun, causing the moon to appear red due to the debris in space or in the atmosphere. And speaking of atmosphere, the planetoid may strip away some of the atmosphere as the sky rolls up like a scroll. It also appears that the governments will eventually warn the people as they hide in caves. Many of us have heard rumors of such caves being created and built by the government already. Speaking of earthquakes, there has been an increase of them, as Scripture says there will be earthquakes in the beginning of sorrows. That period before the tribulation, and I discussed this in my Beginning of Sorrows video, and you can find that video here. So yes, I believe we are in the beginning of sorrows, and you can see that video there. In other videos, I talk about the beginning of sorrows. Anyways, here is a chart showing the increase of bigger earthquakes. For more charts and more information, I recommend this webpage here, or see a link to it below. That is where I got that chart from. There are other charts there that you can look at showing the increase of earthquakes on the earth. A coming planetoid may be the source of some of these earthquakes, but Scripture also tells us the earth and the universe is getting old. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 10 and 11. You, Lord, have laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They shall perish, but you will remain, and they shall become old as a garment. The Bible tells us how and why this happened. Romans chapter 8, verses 19 through 22. For the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creation was not willingly subjected to vanity, but because of him who subjected it on hope that the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. And we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. When Adam sinned, all creation began to fall in corruption. The universe is getting old, and yes, even the heavens are getting old like a garment. Okay, let's look at the next tribulation judgment that I believe may be tied to this planetoid. Trumpet number 1. Revelation 8, verse 7. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were cast on the earth, and the third of the trees was burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. While the previous judgment had comets or small asteroids hit the earth, with the planetoid missing the earth, here we have more of the same, but bigger, and another effect from the planetoid, of its taking away some of our atmosphere. I will be sharing a clip of a little bit more of this detail later in this video of a theory I will propose from someone else. Trumpet number 2. Revelations chapter 8, verse 8 and 9. And the second angel sounded, as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures in the sea, those having souls, died, and a third part of the ships was destroyed. This may be a volcano in the ocean, possibly triggered by the planetoid, or by the Earth's age due to sin, or a meteor hitting the ocean. And yes, volcanoes are on the rise as well. The following chart is older, but shows this truth that volcanoes are increasing. Here is a chart on volcanoes. Trumpet number 3. Here is where we get the title of this video. Revelation chapter 8, verse 10 and verse 11. And the third angel sounded, and a great star burning like a lamp fell from the heaven. And it fell on the third part of the rivers and on the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. I am persuaded by my dreams in studying Scripture, the near miss of seal number 6 is a different planetoid than that of trumpet number 3 that will hit the earth, named Wormwood. Again, I am guessing it is a planetoid. Too small to be a planet, but too big to be an asteroid. But it could be an official asteroid. I don't know. By the way, I do not believe Tom Horn's so-called prophecy on this, where he states it comes in, I believe, 2027 or 2029. This man cannot be trusted. He prophesied the Antichrist coming in 2016 and has other things I would deem not of God. Trumpet number 4. Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was stricken, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so that a third part of them was darkened. And the day did not appear for a third part of it, and the night also. I am inclined to believe that the debris and dust cloud caused by Wormwood will cause this judgment. But there is another possibility, also shared in more detail in the coming clip. That Wormwood will hit the earth in a certain angle that will cause the earth to spin faster, making our days 1/3 shorter. This is interesting because Jesus' words on this in Matthew chapter 24, verse 22. So here's Matthew 24, verse 22, which could point towards this happening. Unless those days should be shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So it's very possible after this event, days will be shortened on the earth, so that when all these things happen, it's actually a shorter time period in hours, but equal number of days. All right, trumpet number 5. Now, I won't read it here, but it's found in Revelations chapter 9, 1 through 12. It describes demonic creatures coming out of the pit, which will sting all the ungodly people. It may be that Wormwood will open up the gates of the pit to allow this to happen. Do I believe hell or the pit to be a physical place that can be found physically if we dig deep enough in the earth? No, but I do believe it resides in the earth, but in a spiritual realm. Thus I believe when Wormwood hits, it comes with a spirit, which has a key and opens the pit at the same time. You can possibly throw trumpet number 6 here. See my previous video for more on that. Bowl number 2. Revelation 16, verse 3. And a second angel poured out his vial on the sea, and it became like blood of a dead one, and every living soul died in the sea. More volcanoes, or more direct disaster from Wormwood's hit, similar to described in trumpet number 2. But here we see all the sea is turned to red. Earlier it was only a third. Bowl number 3, Revelation 16, 4. And a third angel poured out his vial on the rivers and the fountains of waters, and they became blood. Not only are the oceans red, but now all water sources become red. Bowl number 4, Revelation 16:8. And the fourth angel poured out his vial onto the sun, and it was given to him to burn men with fire. With the earth's atmosphere damaged, it will no longer protect the earth from harmful solar flares. The sun will have such a flare to harm the earth. Bowl number 5, probably another volcano. I won't read the verses here. For more on this judgment, see my previous video. Bowl number 7, Revelation 16, 17 through 21. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and voices and thunders and lightnings occurred, and there was a great earthquake, such as has not been since men were on the earth, so mighty and so great an earthquake. The cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon was remembered. And every island fled away, and mountains were not found. And a great hail, as the size of a talent, came down out of heaven on men, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague of it was exceedingly great. Wormwood's hit more than likely triggered the earth's crust and plates to become unstable, and thus this grand earthquake comes, destroying the city Babylon and many cities around the world heavily damaged. It lowers mountains and sinks islands. And we also have more hail, also from the harmed atmosphere. I discuss why I believe the Antichrist will set up shop in Babylon, Iraq, and how it will be destroyed in this video here. Babylon is ordained to come. By the way, when Jesus returns after this, because that's the last judgment, he will heal the earth. Again, we're going to have 1,000 years of peace, or Jesus ruling the earth, and I discussed that in the last video. Some of this healing of the world can be found in Scripture, and I recommend reading it. It's in Ezekiel chapter 47, verses 1 through 12. Also, I made note of this years ago. When God judged the earth in Noah's time, the ocean did not get judged, but this time it will. This is why I think we see so many beautiful and colorful fish in the oceans, because they never bore the judgment of sin, much like other creatures did. But if you read Ezekiel 47, which I just showed there, you will see God will recreate fish, new fish, during the healing of the earth. As spoken earlier, I will now share a 9-minute clip. This clip is of a man named Brent Miller, who was interviewed on November 10th, 2008 on Coast to Coast. I do not endorse this man, nor that show, as this man seemingly followed and believed the Mayan calendar thing of 2012. He also went on to promote and make other things that I disagree with. Most of this clip I found probable and do agree with, but not all. But much of what he states in this clip can be evidenced, especially when he speaks about the Chinese. You will find that evidence at this link here. I'll also have it below. So if you want more evidence of what he's talking about, this webpage is titled Joshua Chapter 10, The Miraculously Long Day. I recommend checking out that webpage. It's not mine. Of evidence of this event that occurred way back in Bible times. All right, here is that clip, and I will talk a little bit more afterwards.
Let me diverse just for one moment to show you how quickly this world can change.
Okay,
very
sure.
quickly. I indicated that not all world catastrophic events result in a pole shift. Well, I don't believe you're aware, maybe you are, but I don't believe most people are aware that just a few thousand years ago, at 705 BC, a major worldwide catastrophic event occurred. It actually shifted the entire planet, but it was not a pole shift. In fact, during that time, King Hezekiah reigned, and the sun moved backward in the sky. It did not set. It simply, the planet stopped revolving in its current direction, and it moved backward about 10 hours worth, of almost half of a revolution. And then whatever gravitational wave or passing space body affected it, it released it. And then it continued to move forward in the same direction. At that very same time, 705 BC, according to our current calendar, the ancient Chinese, who were great astronomers, they recorded that the sun set twice in the same day. It set, it rose back up from the west, and it set again. Now,
that sounds like we were doing the moving.
Right. Now, during that time, before that time, we have discovered, it is very well documented over hundreds of years. There are historically 15 ancient calendars that were discovered before that time, that existed before 705 BC.
15
ancient calendars. Every one of those calendars has 360-day years. Every calendar is based on a 360-day year. After that event, every calendar for the next 5 years, all around the planet, all the civilizations changed their calendars. The Assyrians, the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, the Hebrews, the Persians, the Greeks, the Chinese, the Mayans, the Hindus. There's every civilization that existed during that time over the next 5 years readjusted their calendars to 365-day years.
Something happened. How did they know this?
They knew it because the stars didn't line up. In fact, they took various approaches. It was very interesting. Numus Pompilius, the second king of Rome, recognized the original calendar, but he added 5 days per year to it to adjust. King Hezekiah, Numa's contemporary at that same time, reorganized the Jewish calendar in a very bizarre way. He added a month each Jewish leap year on a cycle of every 7 and 19 years to make up the adjustment. Other civilizations made different adjustments as they saw the rotational speed of the Earth change as it moved around the sun. So over the period of the next 5 years, all the civilizations caught up to 365-day years. And today, we have 365-day years, but we didn't have that in the immediate past. Before 705 BC, they were 360 days.
That is amazing.
So it just shows you that not all global catastrophic events, it also shows you how frail we are. That we don't know what caused that, but we assume it was a passing space body because we are no longer near the galactic plane like we're approaching now. So if something that small, a passing space body, could cause that, obviously with enough gravitational pull to affect the planet, as our entire solar system passes through this gravitational plane, we expect massive upheaval, as we're starting to see with the earthquakes. And then as we pass through it, we expect to be bombarded by series of small asteroids followed by larger asteroids as we continue to pass through it. The asteroids, of course, are the dust and the settling matter along the dark rift. And this is where I come back to your question about Wormwood.
Mm-hmm.
The prophecies that you're talking about, the one that specifically mentions Wormwood, it mentions that after it talks about a series of events, starting with a pole shift of no less. The exact wording would be similar to the sky recedes as a scroll when it's rolled up, and every mountain and island is moved off of its foundation. Well, if you look at the planet and use terminology that you don't have scientific terminology back then, but if you use whatever terminology you have and you say that every mountain on the planet and every island on the planet is moved off of its foundation, that certainly sounds like a pole shift to me.
Absolutely.
What we expect in our model is exactly what the prophecies then indicate. Now that your atmosphere is stripped, I mean, it just said it rolled away like a scroll, you are at risk to incredible solar radiation or CME blasts. And what is the next prophecy in this series of things? You have literally, if I can, let me find. What I would like to do is I would find a phrase that describes that particular event. Here it is. Let me read to you a phrase from one of the prophecies that you're referring to, and explain it. And hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burnt up.
Oh my.
Okay, now, remember, they don't have scientific terms. If you rip apart the atmosphere of Earth with a pole shift, you are now exposing the upper atmosphere. If a CME blast from the sun, coronal mass ejection, now makes it to the Earth because its magnetosphere has been altered. In other words, our, quote, what is protecting the Earth is now down. We are easily susceptible to the solar winds. In other words, the CME from the sun. That is the fire. Also, as it approaches the upper atmosphere, the 270 degrees minus Celsius temperature of the outside frigid space now touches the upper atmosphere, which is basically water vapor, it would suddenly turn to ice crystals instantly. There's your ice. The hail, which is ice, and fire, the CME, are mixed together and mingled with blood. You're looking at a sequence. It is now moving toward the Earth. What is instantly vaporized? These 43,000 airplanes that are flying at any given moment, and all the people aboard, plus all the flying birds and animals in the air.
Gone.
So in other words, there's your mingled with blood, and then it continues. What does it do? It continues to make it to the deck, and they are thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees are burnt up. In other words, this is a great sequence of events to describe a simple CME blast that literally fries a third of the planet.
But the fact they were able to predict this is
Exactly.
scary.
Now, the next sequence of events is what we would also expect. You have small asteroids hitting the land, hitting the sea, followed by a very large asteroid, what is referred to as Wormwood. Now, this is the really interesting part about Wormwood. You wanted me to give you my take on it. It seems to be a significant. Now, how do they actually, what divine information presents, what divine information they acquire in order to give you an exact sequence in such extreme detail that science can't even begin to touch. I mean, I'll have to leave that to you for right now. But they discuss Wormwood not because it's significant so much, but because of what it does next. A very large, what is like a star or an asteroid, falls to the Earth, and the very next thing that happens is a third of the day and a third of the night don't shine. A third of the moon, a third of the stars, a third, etc. But this is not an obscuration.
Right. It's not like dust in the air.
No, because dust in the air is described next, and it uses different words. This is actually a speeding up of the planet. The asteroid Wormwood actually hits the planet at an angle, so our Earth speed no longer is 365 days. And we now know that it is very simple to alter the spin of the Earth because it happened 705 BC. So basically, we have a whole sequence of events. How they could know anything about this is beyond human kin. I'm just telling you that just right up front. So prophecy is absolutely amazing, but what is more amazing to us is we created a scientific model, a very precise scientific model, and we see that these prophecies model very precisely what we feel this model would present.
I hope you enjoyed that clip. I really think he was onto some truth. In conclusion, I believe that many of the tribulation judgments are tied to two celestial bodies, perhaps planetoids or asteroids or comets. We certainly don't know. There are many theories out there and do not wish to promote or endorse any false evidence. I particularly wish to warn everyone not to follow the prophecies of Tom Horn. All right, so hopefully this video has blessed you and give you some understanding about how God does speak about a planetary object, a solar object, a space object coming towards the Earth called Wormwood. Now, I believe there's going to be two objects that are talked about here, and I went over those scriptures in Revelation. I believe many of the judgments found in the tribulation are going to come from these two objects, I believe, that are headed towards us. All right, once again, if you wish to avoid all these tragedies that are coming, you can. The rapture is coming. And if you are rapture ready, please watch that rapture video. You can miss these disasters and be up in heaven and be full of joy and peace and the joy of God and the pleasures that God is going to give us with the rewards and all that, and miss this horrible stuff that's going to be on the planet. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. God bless. And you have a good day. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you wish to keep up to date with all the videos from gospel-kingdom.com, I recommend subscribing to this YouTube channel by clicking on the gold cross sword in the pink area in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Thank you, have a good day, and God bless.